Now, I'll admit, I am very hard on Republicans and, of course, MAGA specifically. I insult them. I am not nice to them. I make comments about their intelligence. And there's a reason for that. And the reason I do that is because, yeah, it's mean, but sometimes the truth is mean. And I do believe it's the truth. And as an example, I'm going to kick off the Q&A that I have for these next 2 days with a question from a clear MAGA supporter. This is from @ProLifeLDS. So, yeah, if you needed any other proof they're MAGA, here's their question. Word for word, why do you post anti-fake news videos about Trump? Grammar's hard, isn't it, folks? Because technically, what your question is, why do I post anti-fake news videos about Trump? So anti-fake news is real news. Like you put the anti in there when you're trying to accuse me of spreading fake news, but instead you said I spread anti-fake news, which means I spread news. So thank you, YouTube user ProLifeLDS. I appreciate that, because yes, I do. I spread actual news, and I give my opinions and commentary on the news of the day. So yes, that is what I do, and I do it because it's my job. I do it to keep people educated. I do it because I enjoy it. So there's your why. But most importantly, the biggest why of all is because it's necessary. I know you think I'm like mean to Trump and I spread fake news. Okay, you're wrong, and that's it. But we need more voices. Washington Post columnist boasted, I believe it was last Tuesday, that the Washington Post editorial board is now a conservative editorial board. He boasted about that during an interview. So we're losing more and more media outlets. CNN is about to go hard right. We have watched all these other media outlets bow down to Donald Trump. We do not have enough voices on the left, and we need more. And I've been doing it for 21 years. The only people in this industry that have been doing it longer than I have are Tom Hartman and Cenk Uygur. A lot of other people have been doing it for the same amount of time. Sam Cedar is one of them. We both, started with Air America at the same time. He was on air. I was behind the scenes, but both in progressive media. Same thing with Stephanie Miller and Randy Rhodes and Rachel Maddow as well. So we all kind of came up through that Air America thing all together, some bigger than others, but yeah. So we've all been doing this the same amount of time. Everybody else popped up afterwards. David Pakman was just, a couple years behind that. And he obviously has grown exponentially. Brian Tyler Cohen and Midas Touch haven't been doing this for very long at all in the grand scheme of things. And they're, the two biggest. So it doesn't matter how long you've been doing it, you can still pop off and become the most popular person. And that's wonderful. But even so, the fact that I can name like almost everybody, and yes, there are plenty I missed out, Mike Figueredo, Jesse Dollemore, Jeff Waldorf, Crystal Ball, Kyle Kulinski, who was also very huge, by the way. But we don't have a ton is the point. So we do this because we care. We do this because we want to keep people informed. And if you think that what all of us are saying is fake news, then it's because you're living on a steady diet of actual fake news to where you no longer have the ability to recognize reality. That, I believe, is what's happening with this YouTube user. Again, ProLifeLDS. And by the way, next time you want to leave me a comment, make sure you get your grammar correct so that the comment means what you think it means. We have seen increasing calls for the 25th Amendment to be invoked as Donald Trump's mental health continues to decline, and of course, as he continues to act like a ruthless dictator, sending his own military to police his own population. We have seen Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker call for this. We have seen various members of the House on the Democratic side call for the 25th Amendment. But unfortunately, due to the fact that the 25th Amendment requires the vice president and the cabinet to invoke it, it's probably not going to happen. So, do we have any other options? That, of course, leads me to our next viewer question from user 13BrightYellow, who asks, I understand that his cabinet is too sycophantic to ever call for the 25th Amendment to be enacted. Is there anything else that can be done when it's too obvious for anyone to not notice that his brain is gone? Short answer is no. There really is not. Obviously, we do not have national recall elections, so we can't do that. We can't get a recall petition. We would actually have to add an amendment to the Constitution, giving the voters the ability to either recall an election or for the voters to be able to invoke the 25th Amendment. And that, of course, we don't have the numbers to do that either. So no, in terms of 25th Amendment, there is nothing we can do. In terms of removing him from office, there is nothing we can do. He is there. And that is the reality we have to accept. But what we can continue to do is to educate people and remind them every single time Donald Trump's brain malfunctions that this is a man who is likely, according to the mental health professionals, suffering from dementia. And once we get that going, once that becomes the general theme, the voters will, some of the moderate ones, not the MAGA folks, but the moderate voters, the independent voters, will start to realize it. The more they hear it, the more they understand it, the more they accept it, and the more they realize they may have made a mistake voting for this guy and for the Republicans in general. So while we can't change the fact that Trump is in office until, January 20th, 2028, we can help people to not make the same mistakes in the future. But if you're looking for a faster solution, jovially, obviously, I'm suggesting this. If you want Trump out of office, the only way for that to happen is for nature to say it's time to come home. So I don't know, maybe send him some McDonald's gift cards. We know he loves that stuff. Just keep sending him fatty, greasy, fast food and he'll keep shoveling it in. That's definitely not good for a guy that's on blood thinners, a guy that's on cholesterol medication, a guy that's on an aspirin regimen who already has circulation problems. Fast food is like the worst thing in the world. So if you genuinely, just send him some fast food, I guess. But no, we're not wishing any harm on him. Obviously, I do not want him to die in office. I want his legacy to be exactly what he's turning it into. A horrible, ruthless wannabe dictator that is despised by a majority of Americans. That is his fate. I want nothing bad to happen to this guy ever, and I mean that sincerely, because I want history to remember this tyrant, and you should too. We want him to serve this full term, unless, of course, they do invoke the 25th Amendment. I'm okay with that. That's also part of his legacy. I don't want that man to die in office, ever. I want him to live with the humiliation and live with the shame that he has brought upon the office of the presidency. So the new Supreme Court term started recently. We have already seen some pretty decent size rejection of cases. Of course, the Supreme Court rejected Alex Jones's appeal of the Sandy Hook verdict. But one of the biggest cases that the Supreme Court, at least as of this recording, is still considering hearing is the case of whether or not Donald Trump is allowed to unilaterally, without congressional approval, enact tariffs around the globe. That leads me to another viewer question. This one comes from Knight6831, who asks, if Trump tariffs are removed by the Supreme Court, do you think the U.S. economy will survive? As I've seen a lot of people saying a collapse is coming. If the Supreme Court removes the tariffs, right, effective immediately, tariffs are all gone, will the economy survive? Absolutely. 100%. The collapse that these experts Most recently, JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon, who said America is, quote, going broke because of Trump's policies. If the Supreme Court were to reverse his tariffs and get rid of them immediately on the spot, we almost go back to normal. We go back to the recovery that we were experiencing as an overall economy, maybe not individually, but as an overall economy. We go back to that recovery that we were in a year ago. What put us in the position we are in today with the skyrocketing grocery prices and, appliances and cars and all that is the tariffs. The rapid inflation we are experiencing right now is the tariffs. So yeah, if all of it goes away, this imminent collapse, perhaps even the recession, poof. Yeah, it really could be that instantaneous. But will the Supreme Court do it? That is a big question. We have seen this court hand down decisions that clearly go against precedent, that go against the Constitution. So there is no telling what they would do. Obviously, the Constitution, the laws of this country is clear as day. When it comes to, does the president have the authority to do this? The answer is no, he doesn't. Like, why are we even considering this? No, he doesn't. But he did it to get the court cases, which, by the way, is the conservative blueprint. You enact something that you know is absolutely illegal, but you've passed it through Congress, you've signed it either at the state level or the federal level, or it's an executive order, but you do it knowing, or gambling, I guess I should say, on the courts saying, oh, no, if you look at it this way, it's actually legal, so yeah, you can do this. That's why they do this. That's how they got Roe versus Wade effectively overturned. They put a law in place they knew couldn't stand, but they knew they had the majority up there at SCOTUS, and that's all that matters. What happens at the appellate level doesn't matter. They just got to get it to the SCOTUS. So they do it. And of course, much to my annoyance, you always have these groups that think they're doing good, and as soon as these bills are signed into law, they file a lawsuit. They don't wait. And I know some people think, well, that's good. That's what they're supposed to do. No, it's not. You don't file a lawsuit if you don't have victims. Because if you don't have victims, you don't have a case. And that way, when you get to the Supreme Court, that makes it more likely that you lose your challenge. And we see it happen all the time. I know these groups mean well. These are good groups with good lawyers. But my God, wait until you have a fucking case before you just immediately challenge it. And you're like, nope, it's illegal. You can't do that lawsuit. There you go. Yay. And you fucking lose every time. Almost every damn time. And it pisses me off, and it should piss you off too. Because if you just wait, and I know the waiting sucks because suffering happens during the wait. But more suffering happens when you file a lawsuit before you even have a case or a client. You have people with, perceived damages that maybe they could possibly experience in the future. That's not a lawsuit, and that's 21 years of the legal profession talking here, folks. So it pisses me off. But that's what the SCOTUS is for. That's why conservatives do it. They know these liberal groups are out there waiting to pull the trigger and file that lawsuit the second the ink dries. And that SCOTUS comes to their rescue every time. And honestly, I think they're going to do that with Trump and his tariffs too. There's been a lot happening in the news these last couple weeks, but one of the things we cannot forget is that Donald Trump has not released the Epstein files as he promised on the campaign trail, as his advisors had promised, as his cabinet had promised, as conservative pundits had promised. No Epstein files from any Republicans have been released. The Democrats in the House have, slowly trickled out a few here and there that they've gotten from the Epstein estate, and those have been pretty massive. But we want the whole thing. And it's obvious that Donald Trump is not releasing them. His administration is not, and Mike Johnson is running cover for them to not be released because he's in them. He may not even be in them doing anything illegal, but he may have been there when illegal things were happening, and that's embarrassing enough. And Trump is suffering in the polls from it. Every poll that comes out, which we get Epstein polls probably every 2 to 3 weeks, I guess, it shows more and more Americans do believe he is actively engaged and a part of and orchestrating the cover-up. We already have a majority of Americans who think that, and it is hurting him politically. And that brings me to another viewer question. This one from Mike Weedo Zero, who says, quote, if Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, how will this affect him politically throughout his presidency, and how will this affect the Republican Party for covering it up? And again, the answer to that is we already see it happening. We see their poll numbers going down as a direct result of the cover-up of the Epstein files. But Republicans, Trump included, but mostly those in the House that are covering it up, are banking on one simple, undisputable fact in American politics that I have told y'all 1,000 times. The American public has the shortest attention span of a human being, like humanly possible. They forget, and then when they forget and it's brought up again, 6-7 months down the road, suddenly it's not a big deal. I mean, already we're in October, right? The Epstein file thing blew up at the beginning of July, and that was the news. That was the news. And then it was little other stuff, some big stuff. Now it's just like, oh, yeah, the Epstein stuff. Yeah, I mean, sure, if you got it, do it. If you don't, whatever. People are already moving on from it. And we have 13 months, a little under 13 months, till the midterms. So if the midterms were held today, would the Epstein files be a massive issue? Absolutely. If this song and dance of covering it up goes on till next year, will it be an issue? No. If we get the files now, and it does show a lot of bad Republicans in there, more so than Democrats, then yes, that does affect next year's elections, because then it proves they were covering up to protect their people, either politicians or donors. So there are a lot of different ways, I guess, that the Epstein files saga can play itself out in next year's midterms. Some of it bad for Republicans, some of it helpful for Republicans. But I think overall, politically speaking, for Trump and the Republican Party, the Epstein files, not their biggest concern in next year's midterms. Biggest concern, as per usual, is pocketbook issues. And that may be an outdated term. I don't know that many people even call it a pocketbook. But how about bank account issues? People can't afford groceries. Prices are skyrocketing. Everything is becoming more and more unaffordable. We're headed towards a potential housing market crash again. Those things, the kitchen table issues, the bank account issues, my money doesn't go as far as it did 2 years ago. That is going to hurt the Republican Party far more than anything in those Epstein files. One of the most common questions that I have gotten in all of the years, that I've been doing these Q&As is, what does the future hold for the United States? Has MAGA destroyed it? And then, of course, I've done a couple Q&As since Trump came back into office, people asking, like, does America survive Trump? Like, what happens when he leaves? Do we survive? How long? And let me read you just one particular question. I picked one because, again, I had a ton of them. This is from Cyberprime9355, who asked, do you believe that when the chaos in our country subsides, which I thoroughly believe it will, how much of it do you believe will be repaired and rebuilt with something better and stronger? Maybe something that the Founding Fathers couldn't have anticipated or prepared for. And I and I picked this one because I think this was probably the best wording of it. Also the most optimistic. I salute your optimism. I don't share all of it, but I salute it. I do think, I can't even say that. I was about to say I do think the country survives, but honest to God, I don't know. It's so difficult to even say, yes, obviously we're going to survive. Empires do fall. It may not be as common in modern day as it was, 1,500 years ago, but it happens still. Countries split apart. We have seen that this century. So I cannot say for certain, I cannot say with optimism that we do survive. And if there is some kind of break in the country, I'm screwed because I'm down here in red state Florida, and all the red states above me are going to, like, I'm in a block here, so I'm going to have to get the hell out of here. But that's my problem to deal with. I do think that if the country survives, it can be repaired. And I do think, yes, repaired with something better. Because if we limp along with just the same old that we have here, these cycles of like moderate Democrat, hardcore Republican, far to the right, then we're going to end up forever shifting to the right, which will eventually destroy the country, lead us to authoritarianism, lead us to economic ruin, all of the things that Donald Trump is already doing, just, progressively worse. But if we get transformational politicians, of any party, really, transformational politicians who come in and tell people, we've been doing it this way for 250 years, we got to change things up, right? If we want to stay fresh, if we want to stay a country, if we want to get people united, we're going to have to do these things, right? It's time for us to stop being the only industrialized country on the planet that does not offer universal health care. Okay, we need to do that. Universal free college. We need an educated population that is free from government interference in terms of what you can and cannot teach. Government will fund it. Your tax dollars will fund it. But you don't have to worry about the cost of college anymore. Go for it. Get the corporations out of politics. That's going to be the toughest one. But that is the one where if we did it, that would make the most change in this country almost overnight. Almost overnight. The reason we have a for-profit healthcare system is because of money in politics. The reason we have a student loan debt crisis is because money in politics. The reason we don't take care of the environment and we let it, be exploited by all these corporations is because money in politics. The reason we do not have the same kind of price controls on goods that we purchase every day that other countries have is because money and politics. So until we get that sorted out and get it removed from the system, we will forever be in this downward spiral. It just depends on how quickly the spiral goes down. With Trump, it's going pretty quick. A Democrat will come along and slow the spiral, but will still be headed down overall. So, number one issue is get corporate money out of politics. Because if we don't do that, it doesn't matter if there's a Republican in office, it doesn't matter if there's a Democrat in office. We cannot, as a country, limp along much longer.